Welcome into another edition of the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by a special guest today, David Ware, who does a great job running App State Mania on the 24/7 Sports Network. And as A&M gets ready for Appalachian State this week, really encourage people to head over there and check out his work as well. David, how are you doing? And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, great to be with you. Looking forward to making a bucket list trip to College Station and experiencing the game day down there.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I wanted to ask you was Appalachian State's obviously no stranger to going on some of these, big trips. They went to Penn State in 2019 or 2018 and North Carolina 2019, Miami 2021. What's been the talk and buzz about heading down to College Station and that game?
Well, I think it's the kind of conversation you'd expect around it. Texas A&M is its own brand, and that's a game day environment that's got a lot of mystique around it, and I think any college football fan would like to be a part of that. And then there's the added element of it being an SEC game. We've not had a ton of SEC matchups over the year. Been to Auburn, been to LSU. We've done a game at Tennessee. This is something really unique for our fan base. Obviously, we've got alumni in that Texas market too, so it's a great opportunity for them to be able to come out and see the home team on the road. It's a great matchup, and I think it's one of those opportunities we have as a program, especially one that has really run some Power 5 teams to the wall. We always come in with maybe a little bit of added pressure, but it's pressure that the program wants.
Yeah. They've obviously had the big upset that everybody remembers over Michigan, and Jimbo Fisher talked about that yesterday. Just that he saw this App State program really, on the cusp of beating somebody when App State went to LSU a couple of years before that, and he really spoke highly of their ability to play in any sort of conference. What did you make of those comments, and do you think that's something that App State could play in a Power 5 conference potentially and have success there?
Well, it's a much debated topic among App State fans, and as bizarre and frequent as realignment has been over the past few years, I'd never rule anything out. I think from a football perspective, certainly App State has shown that they can compete on that level. But I think we all understand the resources that takes financially. And, it's not just about competing in football. You've got to have an athletic program in general, the facilities in general, and a lot of other things that accompany that if you want to be able to be truly competitive at that level. And, I don't know anyone who wants to make a jump and not compete. It's not enough just to be there. You've got to be there with some purpose. So, I think App State, truthfully, is some distance away from that right now. Right now, to be honest, the Sun Belt Conference is right up at the top of the G5 level of competition. Mm-hmm. I think as good as anybody. And, with the expansion that took place this year, I don't think that's done anything but, strengthen the conference. So, right now, I think we'll just take on the task of trying to get back to the top of the Sun Belt Conference. We've been there before, have not been the last couple of seasons, and I know that's a priority for this team. And playing a game at Texas A&M certainly helps us to prepare for the level of competition we're going to see in conference. But right now, I can promise you the Aggies are the only thing on anyone's mind.
No doubt. And Chase Bryce, obviously looking at him, he's coming off a big opener against UNC with 6 touchdown passes. What areas of his game do you feel like in year 2 he's kind of maybe taking that next step forward and getting more comfortable?
Well, there are a couple of things at play. Look, number one, Chase is a really good person, first and foremost. Yeah. He came in here, he earned his team's trust last year, enough to the point that even after being here for only 1 year, the team voted him as a captain for this season. I think that says a lot about his character. He has made it about the team, not about himself, even though he's been at Clemson, he's been at Duke, he's been, in some high-profile places. As far as this year goes, another big factor is we're currently on our 5th offensive coordinator in 5 years. Kevin Barbay came from Central Michigan. And Kevin brings some unique perspectives. He did some things on Saturday that are a little unique to our offense. And I think that opened up the game for Chase quite a bit. The other thing Chase is working with is we had 4 receivers graduate last year who totaled about 9,000 yards of receiving collectively during the careers at App State. So a big transition took place, and he's really embraced that. He completed passes to 12 different receivers on Saturday. He threw 6 touchdown passes, and every one of those went to a different target. So, he hasn't let the transition of receivers slow him down at all. In fact, I don't know, maybe it's almost kind of freed him up. And he's just, he was slinging the ball all over the field. The numbers kind of speak for themselves. I don't think it's the kind of game we wanted to have to play, but it was what we ended up needing to do. And I got to be honest with you, at the end of a game where North Carolina knew what was coming, they just couldn't stop it. And I think I see in Chase maybe someone who's playing with maybe a little more swag this year than he did last season.
It seemed like there was really a point of emphasis, especially early in the game, to get the ball out of his hands early and get him in some of those playmakers and get them out in space. Do you foresee that could be something they look to do against A&M as well, especially with that front?
Well, I mean, I think everyone understands the defensive line talent that Texas A&M has. So, I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a feeling out period where, we have to determine how well our offensive line is able to protect Chase. Last Saturday against North Carolina, they did a really good job of it. We were blocking with primarily our 5-man offensive front, allowed us to get the tight ends and running backs out into patterns. And they were huge in the game. We had 10 completions to tight ends and running backs on Saturday. So, if we can free those guys up to get out into pass patterns instead of having them stay in and block, I think that's big. But I do foresee maybe some things that get the ball out of Chase's hands quickly, maybe get it out on the perimeter a little bit and try to create some one-on-one situations out there. So that we can gauge, just how much pass pressure Texas A&M is going to create.
You mentioned that running game, obviously. Who are some couple guys to keep an eye out there? And they were obviously tough to bring down as well against North Carolina.
Yeah, we've kind of got starters 1 and 1A, and I really couldn't tell you who's 1 and who's 1A, frankly. Cam Peoples started the game on Saturday. Cam's a little bigger. He's about 6'2", 220. More than, I think he's probably around 2,400 career rushing yards now. Cam is kind of a downhill runner. Likes to get out on the edge, kind of that outside zone run. If you don't come up prepared for that stiff arm, he might put you on the ground with it. Just hard to tackle. The other running back who had over 100 yards on Saturday is Nate Noel. Nate's a little just incredibly quick cutting, smaller back. A lot of times I think defenses have a hard time locating him because he can kind of get in behind that offensive line, and the next thing you know, that was him that just went past you. He's very quick, accelerates down the field, broke a long touchdown run against North Carolina. So they're very different types of runners, which I think is one of the strengths is, as soon as you get used to one of them, here comes the other one, and he runs completely differently. And then I'm going to add a third name in here. Datrick Harrington is a 6-year running back for us, and Datrick's had a really interesting story. He's had a couple of ACL tears. He's had a broken foot at one point during the season. In 2020, actually, Datrick in the middle of the season was actually leading the Sun Belt Conference in rushing yardage and had an ACL injury there. So he came in around the third quarter. We were down by 20, and Datrick came in and really had a great series where he tore off about 2 or 3 10-plus yard runs. And I really felt like he re-energized that offense. We scored on that drive, got the ball back, scored again, and, we were right back in it. So, we've really got 3 guys with a lot of experience, all of whom who have been, near the top of the Sun Belt in rushing. Those 3 guys will be the primary ones you guys will see on Saturday.
Gotcha. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk a little bit on the defensive side of the ball for Appalachian State as well. Stay tuned. Welcome back into the Gig 'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am joined by David Ware again. David, looking at the defensive side of the ball, what big adjustments do you feel like Appalachian State has to make in this game? Obviously, they tried to bring more pressure in the second half against North Carolina. What adjustments do you feel like they'll try to make in this game?
Well, I don't know if it's adjustments per se. I mean, number one, and head coach Sean Clark said this pretty directly after the game, and he said it to me again after his press conference on Monday. There were just a lot of mental breakdowns, especially in the secondary. Those guys have got to be better. And, you can look at the numbers and the score and understand that was not App State's best defensive game by far. And look, here's the thing. This is a defense that has been top 30 in FBS in total defense every year since we moved up to FBS in 2014. So, it's very atypical, but we have undergone some player transitions, some guys who were back there for a long time. And you've got guys that are talented, but are in new situations. You can practice all you want. It's not like being in the game. You can't replicate it all. And you certainly can't replicate being on the field in College Station. So, there are going to be some learning curves that guys are going to go through, but they're going to have to pick up the pace quickly. And Sean made an emphasis of that for this week. So I don't know that we'll change the way we play. We just have to play better.
Along the defensive front, Sam Houston State kind of gave A&M some problems up front, especially with some of those twists and stuns. I'm sure that's something that Appalachian State will take a look at as well. What do you think? How do you think they might try to attack A&M along the offensive line and up front to try to slow down the running game?
Well, I think it'll be a lot the same way, not necessarily because they saw Sam Houston do it, but because that's the way we play. We tend to have defensive linemen that aren't as bulky as maybe you guys are certainly used to seeing. We do rely on speed. We do, I wouldn't call it terribly exotic. They're going to slant and do some of that stuff and try to get into gaps. But, it's really about our nose tackle being able to consume some blockers in those A gaps. And then, we want to bring pressure from the outside, but, playing in a 3-4, which will look a little bit like a 4-3 to you guys because we have an edge rusher, Nick Hampton, who's technically an outside linebacker, and he does have responsibilities. He'll drop out sometimes, but, for the most part, he's an edge rusher and a really good one. And then, we use a field side outside linebacker almost as kind of a quasi hybrid type of position. That's a guy that can come down, defend the run, but can also drop back into pass coverage. So, we're going to run some different looks, but, I wouldn't call it probably making adjustments, necessarily to fit Texas A&M. Again, we just want to do what we do, but do it better than we did last week.
Gotcha. And looking at this, just kind of taking an overarching perspective, what do you feel like are some of the keys if Appalachian State's going to come into Kyle Field and have success and stay in this game? What do you feel like are some of the keys that they need to accomplish this week? Well,
there's some keys that travel. They go, they apply to every single game. You got to take care of the ball. You turn the ball over, you're dead. We can't afford to lose possessions, especially to an offense that's as potentially explosive as A&M's. Secondly, again, we've got to be able to match the physicality. And to be honest with you, in all the games, some of which you mentioned, we play at Tennessee, we take them to overtime. We take Penn State to overtime. 2-point game in Miami last year. All of those things occur because we're able to come in, even though we're not a Power 5 team, but match the intensity and match the physicality of Power 5 programs. And I think that's been a real key to it. But, we've just got to execute. And this past Saturday, you saw an offense that executed. They scored 9 touchdowns and 13 possessions. So, that part of it, I think we've got certainly some momentum and should have some confidence built up. Defensively, we've just got to make sure that we're playing good assignment football. Our defense is one that really does rely on all 11 guys, and it's hard to hide a bust. And that happened too often on Saturday. We've got to tackle better. We've got to find some good ways to create pressure without necessarily compromising the back end of the defense. We started bringing inside linebackers in the second half, and it did increase the pressure on North Carolina. The trick to that, though, is it also increases the pressure on your secondary. Drake May became a much better runner at quarterback because the linebacker who would have been assigned to stop him when he broke the pocket was back there chasing him. And, those are always trade-offs that you don't want to have to make unless you have to. So, but I think, we just have to play our game and make sure that we limit any big plays from Texas A&M.
Haynes King's obviously a guy that brings some of the similar mobility to the table as Drake May. How much do you think they'll lean on maybe what worked and what didn't work against Drake May and try to bring it over this week when they go against a guy like Haynes King?
Yeah, he does have. I noticed a lot of similarities in their games as well. I think the biggest thing is trying to make sure that you close that pocket down, force him to stay in there, force him to maybe get a little bit of the happy feet going. See if you can move him off his spot, but moving him off his spot within a contained pocket. The other thing I noticed that Sam Houston, and I understand this, was probably the smart thing to do. They were playing center field against you guys. They weren't blitzing a lot. They were dropping their linebackers way back into coverage, further than was probably healthy. And you guys just ate them up out of the slot, a lot of crossing routes. Those are things where we have to be able to play a little bit closer to the line and, maybe hopefully disguise some coverages. I know that King did drop a couple of balls into the wrong jersey.
He did.
He seems like a little bit of a gunslinger. So, if you can make him think he's seeing one thing and he's actually seeing the wrong thing, then, maybe you can create some turnovers. That's certainly been part of our defensive success over the years. So, I think none of it matters unless we take care of good assignment football. And that's something that has to improve this week.
Fundamentals, it's all where it starts, right? It all starts up front, tackling and getting the assignments right. David, thanks again for joining us on this. That'll do it for this edition of the Gig 'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to get a notification each time a new video drops. You can also listen to us on Spotify and iTunes and Stitcher and give us a 5-star review on there as well if you like the podcast. We'll be back next week to break down the Appalachian State game and look ahead to a huge matchup with Miami at Kyle Field. Until then, David, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.
Great to be with you.